Hi, this is CJ. Welcome to episode 2 of When the Storm Breaks, a JiKook ABO Enemies to Lovers series full of danger, longing, and forbidden attraction. In this episode, Jimin wakes up in Jungkook's tent, bound but cared for. Outside, the camp is angry, but Jungkook holds the line with firm rules, and the pull between the two alphas hums under every word when Jungkook interrogates his prisoner. New episodes of this story are released every Saturday, and you can keep these audiobooks and podcasts free for everyone by joining the Patreon at patreon.com/cjmoon. Don't forget you can find the original video version as well as dozens more on my main channel at youtube.com/@cjmoonwrites. All links are also in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe. It will really help the channel. So make yourself a cup of tea and get cozy. I hope you enjoy the story.
Chapter 2. The Calm Before the Storm. The storm slackened toward dawn, trading its fury for a steady patter that was just enough to ensure the camp stayed soaked and grumpy. Canvas-side, wet earth breathed up the scent of iron-rich mud and trampled grass. Somewhere, a brazier hissed as a drop found its way to coals. Jimin woke to the ache in his shoulders before he remembered why. Rope, not biting, only enough to hold firm, lay over the back of his wrists where they rested in his lap. The knot sat neat against the inside of his forearm, smooth and well-tied, the kind a careful hand makes so it won't pinch. Outside the commander's tent came the near-constant shuffle of soldiers changing watch, a cough that went on suspiciously long, low voices skirting the edge of argument. He wasn't alone. He could feel Jungkook without looking, a warmth at the edge of his awareness, steady as a standing stone and just as stubborn. The commander had slept sitting, boots planted, cloak half slid from one shoulder. His head tipped forward, dark hair loosened in the night. Jimin didn't say anything. He watched the tent walls brighten with morning instead, as the last threads of the storm faded away. When he shifted to ease a cramp, the rope moved with him, and Jungkook's eyes opened like he'd been alert and waiting the whole time. "Morning," Jungkook said, his voice rough from sleeping. Jimin caught the movement of his gaze, and he checked Jimin over. A quick sweep for breath cadence, color in Jimin's face, any sign of fever. "How's the shoulder?" "Still attached," Jimin answered dry. More than some might expect in a situation like this, really. A corner of Jungkook's mouth twitched. He rose, rolled his shoulders until something clicked back into place, and poured hot water from a kettle nestled on the corner of the brazier into 2 cups. "Drink, then we go out." "Out," Jimin let the words sit. "Into the den that's been pacing outside your tent walls since last night." "They're my walls," Jungkook said, and it wasn't a boast. "They'll remember that." He knelt to check the knot at Jimin's wrists. Not tightening, just making sure the coil hadn't slipped in the night. His fingers were warm as he worked, careful. In the close air, with rain tamping down the world outside, Jimin could almost pretend the rope was something more intimately done. Almost. When they stepped into the morning, the camp felt fresh. Lines had been redrawn in wet dirt. Smoke rose from cooking fires, while further away dishes from the early breakfast were already being scrubbed and put away. A dozen gazes cut to the pair and then away again. Some caught on the rope and didn't move. Yoongi was the first to peel off a cluster of officers and come their way. His expression was cautious. "Commander." "Report," Jungkook said. "Perimeter held," Yoongi replied. "No fresh prints beyond the south run. Someone tried to lift the latch on a grain store and failed. The boot prints look like a child's, so we haven't followed it up further. Also," he added, tone changing by half a hair, "your message from the border office, the one that made us scramble." He flicked his gaze to Jimin for the briefest breath, then back. "I want to see the original from the message chest before it gets sent back to the council. Not the working copy we acted on last night." It was standard. Important dispatches came double-wrapped, an outer summary for urgent action, and an inner-sealed original kept intact for disputes. Camps like Jungkook's logged the originals and sent them back to the council in weekly bundles. The parks used the same system, which was why the word original caught Jimin's attention. If Yoongi wanted the sealed letter now, something was wrong. Jungkook's jaw set. After I deal with Dash, his eyes darted briefly to the right, where more soldiers were gathering, then back again. Their agitation could be read in the way they huddled while they spoke, voices kept low. The den, Yoongi finished mildly. Yes, I'll find you as soon as it arrives. Jungkook nodded. It didn't take long for the den to show teeth. The young one, because there is always a young one, and he is always trying to act more mature than he is, stepped forward before Jungkook had finished the walk to the packed earth square where they drilled. He had a fresh scar along his cheekbone, a new brightness to him that said promotion had come with noise and bravado, not common sense. Commander, he called, chin lifted. With respect, the men are asking why the traitor is fed from your fire. Why he's warm when our tents took water. Jimin didn't move. He watched Jungkook instead, because that told him everything he needed to know about the temperature of the next minute. Jungkook stopped where the square widened, rain dotting his shoulders. He didn't climb a crate or swing his cloak for an audience. He just let the quiet find its level. Name? Cha Jin-ho, the young one said, squaring his shoulders. Around him, a few others set their stance more firmly. Cha. Jungkook's gaze didn't quite reach hard. It didn't need to. You want to ask me in front of everyone why I made a call you don't like? You do it properly. So, he lifted his hand, palm open. So ask your question. Don't shift the responsibility onto others. Jinho's throat bobbed as he swallowed. The rain started again as the wind shifted direction and made 1,000 tiny sounds on 1,000 points of canvas. Why is he warm? He repeated, voice less bright now. When our tents took water. If your tent took water, blame the storm, not me, Jungkook said. And because a prisoner is not a trophy. He is information and leverage that will aid our pack and, until I say otherwise, under my protection. He let the last word stand. You want victory? You win in the preparation. In the hours before the war, not the ones after. We need him breathing. A murmur. Not assent yet. Not rebellion either. And if you're worried about fairness, Jungkook added, the rope is where it needs to be. He shifted a fraction so they could all see the neat knot at Jimin's wrists. Rain ran over it. He doesn't walk free. But also, he doesn't need to suffer for you to feel tall. We hold him as we are, not as the men who took him tried to be. The measure of a pack is how it treats the least powerful in their care. And if you want to be promoted further, you do well to remember that. His eyes moved over the group, steady. If that's too fine a line for anyone else here, speak now, and I'll draw it thicker. The word struck low in Jimin's gut and settled. It wasn't mercy, it was integrity. Rain beaded along the hard line of Jungkook's jaw and caught in his lashes. His mouth held steady, no triumph in his words, just truth. The hand that had tied the knot not around Jimin's wrists hung easy at his side, knuckles nicked from battle, tendons taut under damp skin, while his shoulders stayed square without swagger. The voice was low, even made to carry without being raised. The scent off him was rich sandalwood, warm and grounding, steady as a heartbeat. Jimin felt his own pulse answer before his mind did. Jungkook was a study in power. What every alpha should be rather than the all-too-common toxicity and bullying. It was dangerous. How beautiful that was. Jimin ducked his head and pretended to study the rope wrapping his wrists so he wouldn't stare. Around them there was silence, except for the storm. Then a cough, a boot scuff, the sound of someone remembering a task they had to do somewhere else. Even Jinho's shoulders settled, just a little before he muttered a half-baked apology and scuttled off. Yoongi returned through the thinning crowd, a sealed packet held in 2 fingers like it might stain. He passed it without flourish. The original. Jungkook broke the red wax with his thumbnail and cut the cord blue-dyed, river-worked rope, twisted clean and tight. He smoothed the paper flat and went still. Yoongi's eyes narrowed. You see it. I do. And I'm pissed we didn't ask to see the original before it was stored last night. Jungkook held the cut length up so the nearest soldiers who had started a crowd back around could see. Wrong cord. Our border office ties letters with plain flax twine and a clerk's double-hitch knot. This is the blue stuff river crews use, and it's finished with a sailor's tuck. He turned the sheet so the lower edge caught the light. And here, the way the ink feathers. That only happens when a page gets wet soon after it's written. The cover message claimed this was dispatched before last night's storm. If that were true, the ink would have set. It hasn't, which means it was written while it was raining, and that was not yesterday afternoon. It was last night. Yoongi gave the den the version anyone could carry. Plain words. The urgent note that sent us chasing after the Black Swan was forged outside this camp. And whoever forged it didn't just fake the night summary. They faked the sealed letter too. None of this came from our own pack. Except Jungkook interrupted, his face like thunder. At some point this message had to change hands. Someone in the John pack knew this was a forgery when they passed it on. Jimin felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His own pack set him up. Sure, the forgery appeared to come from a third party, but no one knew his location and movement but his own pack, and even then there were only a trusted few. The Parks set the snare. They had steered his route and hired river hands to take him. Someone among the Johns had only chosen the hour to deliver the forgery, so Jungkook would move at once. A shout cut the square. One of the southern sentries, breath running ahead of him. "Commander!" Jungkook didn't look in his direction. His eyes were on Jimin, gaze measuring his reaction. "Report. Found these near the second dish." The sentry opened his fist. 3 coins lay there, 2 bright with fresh stamp, 1 dull. Dropped in a hurry. Yoongi plucked one up. "Park silver. Newly minted." He tipped the dull coin. "This one is ours, though." He looked at Jungkook, then briefly at Jimin. Not a windfall. A payment trail. The den leaned in with their ears, if not their feet. The air shifted. Less hunger, more unease. Jungkook let the coins fall back into the sentry's palm. "Take these to the clerk," he said. "Write them in a logbook and lock them in the evidence chest. Post a guard on the chest." He looked at the camp quartermasters. "Both of you, come to my tent after the morning drill." Jungkook slid the cut blue cord and the open letter into an oilskin folder inside his cloak. "The cord stays with the letter. I will keep them together until the hearing." The look he shared with Yoongi was not surprise. It was agreement. This matched what they had begun to suspect. There were people in both packs that wanted war, and they were desperate enough to betray their own to get it. Jungkook faced the square again, voice carrying without force. "Listen well. There will be a hearing about this later today. Until then, no one touches the prisoner without my leave. Any soldier who thinks otherwise can bring me their belt and badge before they try." A few chins tucked, boots shifted. The den, having been given its boundary, found the comfort of it as betas and omegas would do. Jimin stood in the rain and watched Jungkook finish the camp business with quiet efficiency. Orders clean, edges soft where they needed to be, never showy. What if flickered through his thoughts uninvited? What would it be like to mate someone like that, to be met head-on instead of always being deferred to? His father's favored names for future mates, polite omegas, obliging betas, paraded through his mind like well-trained dogs, all deference and no teeth. None of them had ever felt like a true equal. Jungkook did. The thought slid lower, through his stomach and into his loins. He imagined the press of a real claim. Teeth at his throat, not to mark possession, but to promise I see you, as you are. Meet me there. Rain jeweled Jungkook's lashes. A drop caught on his mouth and didn't fall. Jimin pressed his wrists together lightly against the rope. He didn't want this, an attraction that could lead nowhere, but he'd be a fool to try and deny it. The storm inside him churned, then settled to the slow, stubborn rhythm of their shared breath. Not surrender, not yet, possibly never, just a simple truth named quietly. He wanted him, and for now he would hold that wanting like a hidden ember, warm against the rain. Jinho stepped forward again, but it was different now, his words far more respectful. "Commander," he said, not challenging this time. "If he's to be held, the men will want to see that it's real." "Good," Jungkook said. "They should." He glanced at Jimin. "Walk with me. Then, to the den. You'll have your proof." Jungkook made a show of it without cruelty. He took Jimin to the central post and looped the rope through the iron ring bolted there. He didn't pull it tight. He didn't need to. It was secure enough. He placed Jimin where everyone could see and set a stool and a brazier within arm's reach. because real power is not about cruelty. He posted 2 guards, one veteran who looked bored, one young who looked like he wanted to look bored, but it was all too new to be boring. And he stood there long enough for the den to take the mental picture and file it where Jungkook could recall it if there were complaints again. Yoongi drifted close while the camp settled back to work. He kept his voice low, so only the 3 of them and the rain could hear. "The courier's name is missing from the logbook," he said. "It says he was transferred, but there's no paper saying where he went." "How convenient," Jungkook said, rolling his eyes. "Oldest trick in the book," Yoongi shrugged. "When a name disappears like that, someone is hiding it on purpose. It makes the courier hard to find and harder to question." Jimin knew the move. Both councils did it when they wanted someone to vanish into a different post. Erase the line, claim a transfer, leave no trail. No questions, no witness. Yoongi turned and added, almost idly, "You smell calmer, Jimin." Jimin lifted a shoulder. "I'm just deciding what kind of fool I am." "Pick later," Yoongi advised, eyes not unkind. "For now, be the kind that drinks warm tea when it's offered." Jungkook looked at the rope between Jimin's wrists, then at the brazier, then at the den that was finally looking away. "You'll be questioned after the midday bell," he said, pitched for Jimin only. "Not by the den. By me." "An interrogation, that isn't," Jimin murmured. "If you like," Jungkook said. His mouth almost smiled again, quickly disguised as a commander's neutral. "And Cha Jinho will be on perimeter until dusk." "Far perimeter." Yoongi's brows lifted, impressed despite himself. "Merciful." After his attitude today, he said, "Sometimes they need to be reminded that discipline is meant to correct, not punish," Jungkook answered. He stepped back, eyes fixing on Jimin. "Eat. Keep warm. I'll question you in private after lunch. I'll make sure the camp understands the orders custody is mine. No one touches you without my leave." He left then, cloaked dark with rain, Yoongi at his shoulder. The camp continued to move about its daily business, while Jimin sat on the stool within reach of heat and watched. He could still feel the knot in the rope, set by a careful hand so it wouldn't hurt. He could still hear the place in Jungkook's voice where the concept of we lived, even if he hadn't said the word. And under the smells of smoke and wet wool and iron earth, something small and stubborn kept breathing between them. Not a promise Jimin dared to trust yet, just the start of one. Still, it was enough to warm one corner of the storm, even if the weather wasn't done. The commander's tent was quiet when Jimin's guards delivered him back to it. The brazier glowed low, steam lifted in thin threads from kettle. Someone had laid out 2 cups, and a small plate of dried fruit like this was a meeting and not an interrogation. Jimin sat dutifully in the chair next to the warmth of the brazier that the guard gestured him to, rope on, wrists in his lap. Jungkook came in a breath later, shook the rain from his cloak, and hung it by the flap. His hair was damp and darker for it. He didn't take the chair behind the table. He pulled it around and sat across from Jimin at the brazier, close enough that the heat touched both their knees. "Tea," Jungkook said, as if was hosting a party. He poured, set 1 cup within reach, and then, gently and deliberately, loosened the knot at Jimin's wrist by 1 turn so he could lift it. Not off completely, just enough. "It isn't poison," Jungkook added dry. "If it was, it would definitely ruin your chance of getting answers," Jimin said, matching the tone, and the corner of Jungkook's mouth almost gave him a smile for it. They drank quietly, comfortable in the silence that settled around them. "Talk to me about last night," Jungkook said eventually. "Not the mercenaries. You're out." Jimin could have lied. To be loyal to his pack, he probably should have. He didn't. "I argued for the East Road. Drier. Easier to protect. The order changed an hour before we left." He swallowed, felt the tea run warm into a stomach that hadn't wanted anything all morning. "They said the river path would be safer. Fewer eyes. We left by the west gate with a smaller escort than planned." "Who signed the change?" "A senior hand." Jimin kept it vague. "It didn't matter anyhow. The name on the line won't help you. Names are easy to borrow when they sit that high and there is no direct connection." "Then give me one thing I can verify," Jungkook said. "A time, a name, something I can put a soldier on." "I'm not asking you to guess. I'm just asking for a place to start." What unsettled him wasn't the questions. It was the way Jungkook asked them. No bark, no threat. Please sat in the spaces where other commanders would have used force. Jungkook had moved the chair close, not looming, just present. He had turned the seat, so they shared the brazier's heat like equals. Loosen the knot one turn so Jimin could lift the cup. Courtesy is a choice, not a trick. Jimin's body knew the difference and betrayed him for it. Easing little by little the longer, Jungkook's voice held steady. It felt less like being cornered and more like being invited to tell the truth, even if parts of it would cost him later. He wasn't naive. The rope still lay across his wrists, and this was still strategy. But gods, to be treated like a person and not property. It made something in him lean forward when he should have stayed back. Jimin met his gaze. My best guard was reassigned at the same time. Name the guard, Jungkook said. Lee Sun-woo, Jimin answered. He knows my pace. He noticed when something felt wrong. Jimin's mouth tilted. He told me to keep my knife in my left boot, hilt forward, where it would be accessible if the worst happened. And did you? Jimin felt the question hang there, heavy as iron. Tell him, or don't. Naming the blade would either mark him as a fool or as someone willing, or possibly foolish enough, to trust. He chose it anyway. If this was going to be a reckoning, better be honest. I did. Jimin met Jungkook's gaze head-on. It's still there. Jungkook's eyes flicked down, and Jimin heard the quiet hum that meant approval whether Jungkook wanted to give it or not. Good. Keep it. You haven't used it on me yet, so I'm trusting you won't. You're very polite for a man holding the end of a rope, Jimin said at last. I like truth, Jungkook answered. Politeness makes it easier to bring out. He set his cup down. Tell me what you smelled when the change in orders came. In the room. Jimin let himself go back. Nervousness. People riding too fast to be routine. One man afraid of the rain and pretending he wasn't. One woman who believed it. Believed the river path would truly be safer. He looked up. And one other thing. He hesitated, now wanted to say it out loud. What? Relief, Jimin said, exhaling slowly. The kind of person feels when a plan clicks into place. Jungkook's face didn't change much, but Jimin felt the attention sharpen. Good. Which gate did you leave from? West, with a much smaller escort than planned. Jungkook didn't write anything down. He watched Jimin instead, like he could tell when a sentence was finished by the way Jimin's throat moved. I won't make you guess names, Jungkook said. Guesses get innocent men killed. You've given me one guard I can trust, a time, and a gate. That's enough to start. Jimin nodded once. You should have stopped there. He didn't. I know what it looks like to you, he said, voice steady. An envoy caught near your lines, right after a message told you to run there. It's clean. It would make a war look like it started honestly. He lifted his cup, swallowed, set it down again. I told you all this because I don't want you thinking I helped build that lie. I didn't. I just walked into it. I'm loyal to my pack, but I don't want a war. I want to go home alive. Those things can live in the same person. Jungkook's jaw loosened and set again. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands loose between them, and the air shifted with him. Warm sandalwood bloomed in his scent with a deeper sensuous amber humming underneath it. The notes came clear and unhidden, like Jungkook wasn't bothering to hide them at all. Alpha to alpha. They read each other without trying. Jimin felt his own instincts answer, low and sure, as if something inside him had just stood up straighter. It felt like leaning dangerously close to a fire he was sure he could contain. You're not a trophy, Jungkook said. You're a person. I meant what I said in the square. I know. His shoulders eased before his mind consented, soothed by the scent as much as the voice. The relief made him angry and grateful at once. Jungkook's gaze touched the rope. Does it hurt? No, Jimin let a brief smile show, then hide. It annoys me. It's supposed to, Jungkook teased, unable to hold back a laugh. He leaned in long enough to check the knot again, then sat back in his chair again. The near brush of him in the small space made Jimin's breath hitch. He hoped Jungkook hadn't heard it, but he suspected he had. You won't speak at the hearing, Jungkook said. I'll deal with the soldiers. If anyone tries to bait you, keep your eyes on me and breathe. Understood, Jimin said. I can do that. Jungkook's mouth almost smiled. Good. Jungkook is he started. The name felt strangely natural on his tongue, but he didn't stop to dwell on it. You could be cruel to quiet them, but you're not, Jimin said. You keep me warm and breathing, and I can tell it's not just because you want something from me, but because it's right. His eyes traced the lines of Jungkook's face, the curve of his cheekbones and his jaw, settling on a little brown mole under his bottom lip. You're a good person, Jungkook's mouth almost smiled. You understand me. I'm trying not to, Jimin said softly, and then wished he could have the words back, but he also didn't look away. Mercifully, Jungkook didn't make it worse by acknowledging he had heard Jimin's confession. Look, I can't pull your guard out of your father's house, he said plain, but I can send a rider to the border post they use and ask if anyone named Lee Sunwoo was redirected to a granary yesterday. Technically, our packs aren't at war, so there's no reason they should deny such a simple request. If the story is clean, it will match. If it was a cover, the gaps will show. He tapped the table lightly, and I can make my own men bring me our gate roster from last night to see if anyone helped the forged message through from our side. Thank you, Jimin said. The words felt strange in this tent. True, though. They felt quiet. It wasn't empty. It was the kind of quiet that could turn into something, anything if someone breathed wrong. Jimin, Jungkook said at last, and the name in his mouth was careful. If I give you a way to live, will you take it? If I give you a way to live, Jimin answered, matching him, will you? They looked at each other for a beat that felt like the moment before rain starts to pour. The tent flap snapped. A runner ducked in without waiting for a call. Commander, she blurted, breathless, rain on her face. Mudslide above the south ridge, 2 tents down, 1 man hurt. The north ditch is flooding. Captain Min says we have to move the central ring to higher ground before dusk. Jungkook was on his feet before she finished. He didn't look away from Jimin as he spoke. Tell Captain Min I'm coming. Start moving the camp. Priority is the evidence chest, the infirmary, and the command tents. Yes, sir. She was gone before the flap could fall back into place. Jungkook set his cup aside and reached for the rope. He didn't tighten it. He checked the bundling strip he'd used to protect Jimin's skin. If Jimin wasn't trying hard to stay grounded, and wasn't very much a prisoner, he'd swear Jungkook was using it as an excuse to touch him. We're moving the camp to the ridge, he said, plain and calm, as he drew back. You'll stay under my guard the whole time. Jimin's heart gave a small, hard beat. The caves, Jimin said, trying to keep his voice even. Close quarters for a bunch of wolves already on edge. There's no air in a cave for sense to escape. Jungkook heard the undercurrent. His gaze lifted from Jimin's mouth to his eyes, and in that short path Jimin felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with being a prisoner. There are overhangs if the rain isn't too hard. Jungkook said, it's dry ground at least, and we can be there before dark. And what happens after dark? Jimin asked, too even. After dark, Jungkook said, we will do what's necessary. The priority is keeping you alive when what happened last night shows someone clearly wants otherwise. The we was there again, quiet and steady. Unmissable. Jungkook stepped back, put the chair where he'd found it, and picked up his cloak. At the flap he paused, looked back once more at Jimin in the brass light. You gave me enough to start, he said. It's only fair that I bring you whatever I find from it. And if what you find is ugly? Jimin asked. Then we clean it, Jungkook said. Or we burn it. We'll make the decision together, but not today. Today we move. He left. The braziers still burned, radiating warmth that would too soon need to be extinguished. Outside, the camp buzzed with activity, knowing that rain was coming hard and soon. Jimin lifted the cup, finished the last of the tea, and pressed his wrists together to feel the place where a careful hand had made the rope bearable. He didn't know what he was to the man who'd tied it like that. He only knew the weather in his chest calmed when Jungkook spoke, and that was its own kind of trouble. He made himself recount the truths he knew while he waited. He admired Jungkook, his steadiness, his ethics, the way he openly displayed his care for those around him without flinching from command. He wanted, dangerously and desperately, to keep breathing the same air as that voice. But hope was a shifty foundation and nothing to build something solid on. His name, his work, his whole life's worth was tied to the park pack.
Thank you so much for listening. I know the world is a hard place right now, and I really hope this story brought a bit of comfort to your day. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when a new story is released. You can find the written version of this and all my stories on my Patreon for free at patreon.com/cjmoon. I love you, I purple you, saranghae.